Hey, Matt.
Hello, Mike.
Let's do the podcast?
Yes.
Woo! Welcome to Hacking the Grepson, the podcast about development and programming. Today, on the podcast, we are going to talk about a very exciting concept in the world of tech called data analytics. Analyze that data. But let's see, let's break that down into the terms. We got data. So you make something, people use it, they create data. Like if you're on a website, they might have a user
like if
profile.
you're Dr. Noonien soon and you create data and lore and before, right?
Right. We're talking about the lore behind data. Let's use Google just because they're the big one. You use Google, you do searches, you find directions between point A and point B on Google Maps, et cetera, et cetera. You get email. All of that is data that's kept in their large data centers across the world. And how they keep that data, I don't know the exact format. It doesn't matter. But the point is they've got lots of data. And analytics. Okay, so you're analyzing the data. Basically, you're looking at this raw data, like I searched for blah on Google as part of my user profile. Here were the keywords. Here were the results. Here's what I clicked on next, blah, 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 whatever. What does that mean? Like, how is that useful to a company or a person or an entity? Like, who cares if they have that data? Like, why is it important? Well, that's the analytics part. That's the analyzing of the data and extracting meaning from it. And so, sure, as programmers, as developers, we write code that goes into projects that then is used by users that create data. I don't have a lot of experience actually using data analytics tools. Some of the most popular ones that I can think of are obviously Google Analytics has been huge for a long time. Before that, I think the first data analytics I ever used was something called AW Stats, which is very simple and basically creates a page where it says, like, here's who came to the website on what time and what they clicked on and where they came from, et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty simple. It's free. It's open source, I think. Google Analytics, not open source, but it is free. I'm using air quotes. I know there's lots of other packages that basically you can put into your code as like a dependency or a library or load on your website that will essentially take all the actions that users take and analyze the data so you can get some pretty reports or some charts or graphs over time. And then you can look at that and do what you will with it. What about you, Matt?
So I haven't used basically any of what you just talked about.
Oh, excellent.
I actually have a question about it.
Okay.
So does that do the instrumentation for you, right? So a big part of data analytics is collecting the data, right? Having the data exist in the first place. This is a frequent problem in things I've worked on over the years is we want to collect more data, be it from the customers or right now, I work more on the DevX side and like I want to know information about like, I don't know, build times or whatever. Collecting this data, there's multiple parts of it, I guess. There's where it goes, there's how it gets there, right? But there's also just like having it in the first place. Build time's easy because it's, you can just measure the time. But if you're trying to see like, oh, how often does this button get pressed or whatever, which would be useful. Like something has to report that statistic to something. So does the Google Analytics or whatever, does it do that for you? Or is that still something where you have to say, okay, but I want to know about this button? Well, in your code. Yeah,
well, the web, thankfully, in general, is event-driven. So basically, everything in a programming model, event-driven means like it's sort of like a game where there's like a game loop that's constantly cycling. So when you go to a website, it basically is keeping track of this loop and whether something happens during it. Like if you use a game, for example, like you hit the A button and you jump. But on a website, you could click a button. And so you can write code in say your JavaScript that says like add event listener to an element of the web page on a certain event, like click. And then it has what is called a callback function, which essentially means like when this event happens, run this function. And usually in that case, you could have something as simple as logging something to the console. So if you look at the dev console, you can say, when you click this button, write hello world. Okay, so I click the button, the dev console says hello world every time I click it. Now, that's not super useful because it's only in the dev console, right, and it's ephemeral.
And that's just like standard, like as you're writing code, you have an on-click, like in the web, you have an on-click method that does the stuff when you click it. One of those things so I guess that's the part I'm asking. Is it like something you have to explicitly do to, for example, write out to the console in your on-click method? Or is that if you include one of those frameworks like Google Analytics, does it kind of just take care of all that stuff magically behind the scenes for you?
I think most of the web analytics tools like Google don't interface specifically with an event handler like that. Instead, they usually use the log files of the web server. AW Stats, okay, that's all it uses. Now, so essentially what that means is it's not every time I click a button, but it's every time I make some kind of web server request, like give me this page. And so then the analytics tool is just constantly reading that feed and collecting
because that's data that already exists.
Exactly.
That's already being logged out to a system log or whatever. And that type of analytics I'm fairly familiar with. I've written my own, to like look through logs and be like, what the heck's going on? Usually while debugging things. But the more common case that I've seen is where you have to like go in and say, okay, I want to know about this thing. And then everywhere you do this thing, you have to report it to some place. And I think that's where the Google Analytics or whatever could come in handy is you just have to know, okay, I'm going to write this out to the log file too or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's general. Like if it's just a simple HTTP request, it's being done already. But if you want specifically like they click this button, then you would have to add something to the code that says keep track of this button. Although it's sort of like, do you really care that they click the button or do you care that they went to the URL, which is already being
I care
tracked?
About how long they were on the page before they looked at that button, and then how long after they looked at the button did they click it.
Yeah, well, no, and
that is actually a thing that people try to track, and I find that wild.
And yeah, I mean, I should have led with the log files idea because honestly, you can extrapolate a ton of data that doesn't exist in an explicit form, but exactly what you just said. Like you can see that a specific IP said, "Give me the homepage," and then you see the next request is clicked on not necessarily clicked on a button, but went to a URL with an action that they wanted to do. And you can say, oh, it took them 30 seconds between the homepage and going to that URL, so it took them 30 seconds to click the button. I mean, you're extrapolating from that data. They might have just typed it in. And that's where you need the extra handle of like, no, they clicked the button. Or they clicked this specific button, because maybe you have multiple buttons that go to the same place, but they're on different parts of the page. You want to like, oh, they needed to scroll to the bottom, so they had to get through 5 pages of marketing hype before they finally were convinced to click forward, that kind of stuff. So it's a mix. I think a lot of stuff just from the weblogs can be extrapolated. But if you want more fine-grained stuff, you have to add the programming stuff. But also, I think the more interesting part beyond just like how many people went to the homepage this month and which browser were they using and where did they come from, like were they referred from a specific website or did they go to it directly, is over time, the fourth dimension. Yes. Like what are the trends? Like what's trending over time? And like, are we getting fewer people over time or more people? Are they going to these pages more or less? And that's
Does it take this page longer to load now than it used to? Like those are the kind of things I look at, is that kind of information, not necessarily around web pages, but just in general, build times for this step. It says, oh, it takes 15 minutes to do this and it used to take 5. Okay, that's a problem.
Yeah. I used to use a tool called New Relic at my old job. And
heard of that, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of analytics, but it's also kind of a debugging because you can kind of set up triggers, like when a database call takes too long and it's happening a lot and you get like a, hey, this is taking a long time, maybe you should look at this. Or, someone experienced a specific bad HTTP code, like a 404 or a 403 or a 500, and you want to, and because it's very difficult to put somebody who's just like watching the logs all day and waiting for something bad to happen. That's very reactionary and also annoying for humans to do, and much, much better for a computer to look at and report on. And so that's a form of data analytics that I definitely am very familiar with.
Well, I think that, you usually see that in a NOC, right? What is it? Network Operations Center. That's where you usually see somebody, like a bunch of people standing around staring at a big dashboard is the way I always view that. Better is if you can have, like you said, something that's actually watching that data, looking for trends that, get out of the range of normalcy or whatever, and like can alert you early. Then you don't have to be reactive, you can be proactive.
Yeah, I think there's definitely two major arms of data analytics that people might be familiar with, and there's sort of the marketing side, which is like, let's, how well is this product doing, and what are the trends, and what are people using, versus the NOC or kind of like sysadmin network operations side, which is where are the bugs happening and how often are they happening, and they're flagging and alerting so that a human being doesn't have to look at. Because especially a complicated web app or even just a product. I mean, you can look at the console on a Mac OS computer, and applications and services are spitting out information and logs constantly. And it happens so fast that it's impossible for a human being to read that and make any sense of it. And so you need a computer to be analyzing it and telling a human, hey, this is significant, because there's a lot of what we call noise in log files where, okay, people are clicking on things, but I don't care that they're clicking on things. I care if one particular page is getting a ton of hits and it's popular, and maybe we need to spin up another web server or database server because it can't handle, the traffic is too high, or someone is always having a bug in this program because they're clicking on this thing and something's happening. If it happens once to one person ever, that's noise. But if it's happening constantly to a bunch of people all the time, that's something a human being should now pay attention to. And so that's two data analytics things I can think of.
So all of that you just described can, I don't know if easily is the right term, but fairly straightforwardly be done with log files, right? You can write out all this stuff and then post-analyze or analyze, doing like a tail-F kind of thing. We were watching the log as it goes and have something just watching for certain errors and alerting or whatever. But I know that analytics often is more like stored in a database or a big data lake or whatever, and then analyzed sort of en masse. And I imagine a lot of that probably goes back into more of the markety side of things, of like, okay, we want to see, what are the trends for this type of person based on all this data that we've collected? People that really like Legend of Zelda, they are clicking on they're clicking on the login button more. That's strange.
Yeah, maybe we should look into that and lean into that. I just wanted to preface this now that we're, halfway through this episode. Back in the early days of programming and software development, like log files were pretty much all there was. You just, as you're programming a thing, and I mean, I still do this to this day. Like that's how I debug still, is I put a bunch of log or printf or whatever statements like between this line and this line, and does it get through it? And so I'm trying to analyze the how the code is running. But that's really all you could do in the past if you wanted to see. If you had if you had Microsoft Word, like the Microsoft Word 1.0, all right, when that was put out by Microsoft back in the 80s or something, they had no way of knowing the issues that people were having with the software unless people specifically, sent them a letter or called them and said, hey, there's a bug here, and when I click this thing, something happens. Whereas now we fast forward to 2024, pretty much every program and website has some kind of data tracking in it. They call it telemetry. So that, and if they're kind, when you install it or when you go to the website for the first time, they give you a pop-up that says, are you okay with sending this information, basic usage data, hopefully anonymized, so that they know what kind of computer you're using, what OS you're on, and what you're clicking on, and it's, all that kind of data. There's so much data, they call it big data now, that companies can extract from their users that back in the 80s they did not have. That was not a thing. So they had no idea who was using their stuff, what issues they were having. Now, they almost know too much about what everybody's using, and so there's almost a backlash against that because people would maybe rather not be sending everything they do to be analyzed. I mean, I think the most recent thing that we can easily bring up is recall, which is something that Microsoft Windows just announced, and there was a huge controversy over it. It's a tool on Windows 11 that keeps track of everything you do on the computer. And when
thank you.
When devs looked into it, it was basically taking screenshots of your computer like every few seconds and OCRing it and putting that data into a SQLite database on your computer, so that it could and using AI on it somehow, I don't know exactly how, to, as a feature, because I need to go back, it's like turning your whole usage of a computer, desktop computer, into a Git repo that's constantly making commits so that you can go back on it. So now,
I don't
Matt
like
is shaking
that
his
at
head.
I don't. If I want version control of something, I will put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like my computer being smarter than me. I mean, see the previous episode about pair programming. I don't like being observed. It doesn't make it any better if it's an AI. Don't watch what I'm doing all day. I won't get anything done.
But I feel like there's a spectrum. Although it feels like data analytics has gone towards the, we used to be log files only, and also nobody knew how anybody was using anything, to now Microsoft Recall. Is there a happy point in the middle, or is this just a bad thing in general and we need to put the brakes on it?
I mean, I'm sure privacy experts would say it's a bad thing. There was a big effort 5-10 years ago because there was a law passed in Europe, GDPR, which is all about basically protecting your personal information, your personally identifying information, PII. It's an acronym that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I spent a lot of time working with people, lawyers, on this at my last job. Because it's a big thing. If you were doing software and you were in Europe at all, you had to think about this. Yeah. And the good thing about it is, you mentioned earlier, you go to some webpage, it's like, is it okay if we collect some data? That's why you hear those. Instead of it sneakily collecting all this, now it's like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. Now, I hate that because it means that every time I go to a website, it's like, hey, how about these cookies, huh? And I'm like, only the necessary ones, please.
Num cookies.
Next time I go there, it shows up again, and I don't want it. Just remember this. I don't want you to collect any personal information about me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, it all goes back to Google. Everything goes back to Google, where they basically made their empire on giving stuff away for free. And by free, I mean quote unquote free, because you're giving up your information. And they're doing a lot of data analysis on that, and their whole model is based on analyzing that data that they need a constant feed of. And every other company was like, wait, we want a piece of that too. And now we live in a nightmarish hellscape where you can't use a computer, let alone the internet, without fighting a constant battle of someone trying to get your data so they can analyze it to probably sell you ads. Generally.
But I mean, this kind of thing's been going on for ages. I mean, if you think back to like loyalty rewards programs at Vons or whatever. Oh man. That's what the point of that was. It
Core
was
memory unlocked.
Okay, yeah. I know who this person is. They bought these kind of things. Okay, analyzing the trends, 18 to 34-year-old males that have beards like to like to buy bourbon. I don't know, right?
Oh, there's the funny.
I wasn't going for funny. I was just trying to think of an example.
The 18-year-old's buying bourbon, though. I don't know. That's a little dicey.
Yeah, that's when I loved buying bourbon because I could handle it better. But like that kind of data collection and analysis has been going on for a long time, but it's so much more pervasive now.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago hearing about, I think it was Target that had more or less identified that someone was pregnant before they knew it, because they started getting like coupons for baby formula because it happened that they. Or it was before they had announced it. That's what it was. They didn't tell anyone, but they had started to like look at things that were adjacent to baby stuff, and then like Target knew. And I'm like, that's scary, but also kind of useful, but mostly scary. The marketing side of analytics, I don't like. The make my software work better part of analytics, I do.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get to the point in this world where we have one of those and not the other.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's...
Sorry, did I try to solve a world problem again?
I mean, capitalism bad. I know, I get it. It definitely, all the data collection and analysis is definitely a hyper-capitalism, unchecked hyper-capitalism issue where, you know, you give an inch and they're going to take a mile because it's all about the bottom line and making money. And if they can get more data, then they're going to take more data. And it's like... Do they really need the data to be a successful company? Well, define successful company, because that has changed a lot since the 80s. I mean, the 80s, like you think about the 80s, who was on top? I mean, IBM. Where are they now? I mean, they're still around, but I don't think, you know, anybody thinks of them as the top dog anymore.
I haven't thought about IBM in years.
Right. I mean, obviously Google is, you know, Google and Apple. And apparently NVIDIA took over the number 2 spot in the most like wealthy companies. Apple got pushed down to 3. I know NVIDIA, the like video card maker.
What's our new FANG acronym now? It had already changed because of Alphabet.
And Meta.
And Meta. It was like Main. It was like
Mang.
Mana or I don't. Mang.
I think it's Mang. And now it's got to be
Maven.
There we go, Maven.
No, but that kicks out Google.
You can't do that. Nope.
And I don't want to kick out the N for personal reasons.
Yeah, I mean the data driven as opposed to like throwing stuff. I mean, you think about before, like if we use like TV and movies as an industry instead, you know, like I guess focus groups is how they knew. Whether something was worth doing or not. You know, they got a small group of people and they demoed stuff and they're, okay, how do they react? Okay, we should do this or not do this. And like, do they even need to do that anymore? Because everybody watches stuff online, which can be tracked much more easily than going to a theater. So they don't need to do that.
I think they look at trending hashtags more than anything else. I think where you probably still get focus groups is in the earlier stages. Before you've put a bunch of money into something. I mean, that's what pilots were, right? Mm-hmm. They would make a pilot of a TV show and run it by a select audience and be like, huh? And then it'd come back the next time with, you know, a different lead and maybe we're going to focus on this aspect of it instead.
Yeah.
Now with the modern way of releasing TV shows all at once, basically, it happens less. So I imagine that focus groups would be less necessary. I remember as a kid, I lived in LA for a while as a kid. I did focus groups a couple of times. I did some for toys. I did some for TV shows.
Yeah.
I think I saw Back to the Future 3 before most people because of that.
That brings up an interesting question. Do you think that products and services are generally better now because we have so much data?
That depends on your definition of better.
It does.
I don't think the data... I think what it allows for, right? One of the things that has been talked about online, especially lately, that I've seen is that products are less reliable than they used to be. Mm-hmm. In particular, like hardware products, like your phone or whatever. when you had a Nokia, those things would last forever. And now you're expected to effectively purchase a new version of your devices every few years. And I think a lot of that came out of them looking at analytics. You know what? These people will do this. So on that aspect, bad. But I think we have more things that we might want. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think there's some parts that are good and some parts that are not so good.
I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. What is the software development form of the metaphor double-edged sword?
Let's see. Okay, double-edged sword means something that is typically used to mean something that's both good and bad at the same time. Code reviews.
They're the double-edged sword of the software development world.
I don't know. There's some good parts of it and there's some bad parts of it. It's the only thing I can think of.
That's fine. I was just curious, just because we use, every once in a while, like someone uses a term, like dollars to donuts or something like that, and I stop and think, like, wait, why do we say that? That's so weird and random. And usually there's a reason. And also, like, why did a sword become the metaphor?
Right.
Nobody
I don't know.
uses
And the
swords
weird thing
anymore.
about it is, like, a double-edged sword, in my mind, is a typical sword that, like, both sides of the blade are edged, as opposed to, like, a samurai sword, right? That's just like a katana. It's just bladed on one side. But if you think of, like, a broadsword, it's bladed on both. But I think when we talk about double-edged sword in this context, they mean there's no handle and you're also holding a blade or something. Does that exist? I doubt it. What would that be?
Yeah. Why would someone make that? Why would that exist in the world? I don't know.
Hacking, honestly, could be that, because hacking, there's absolutely good uses of it and there's absolutely bad uses of it.
I was going to say
how you're doing it.
I was going to say, and I think you'll love this, I was going to say JavaScript.
No, that's just that. Yeah, that has the end of the sword that just permanently is cut off my hand at this point.
Okay. Yeah. So I just, we didn't even read like the definition of, like, say, what Amazon Web Services, which is a huge cloud provider of lots of services use AWS to put their database and their services on. And they say, what is data analytics? Data analytics converts raw data into actionable insights. And I think that really kind of sums up, like, why anybody ever started analyzing the data that was coming in from people using stuff. It's that, like, yeah, they're using it and stuff's happening, but what are we going to do about it? And before, they were just guessing, and now they have so much data that they have all these actionable insights, which sounds marketing AF, and I hate it. But
if you think about it more as, like, making data-driven decisions, right? That's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in the industry. From that perspective, it makes a lot of sense, because then what you're doing is you're looking at trends. You're looking at, what are our users actually using? All right. Have you heard of the 80-20 rule?
I have, yes.
It's like 80% of your users use 20% of your features or something like that. Knowing what those 20% of the features are is actually really important to producing a good product. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the evil, malicious capitalism side. It could just literally be like, I want to know what people like and don't like out of this thing, so I can focus on the areas that people are using. If 80% of my users are using 20% of my product, I'm going to make sure that 20% is really, really good. And the other stuff, it can be a little bit of an afterthought. Or if you're like, I want more users, I want to make my product appeal to more users, you could look at, like, okay, why aren't they using these things? What is it about that other 20% of people where they are using some of the other 80% of stuff? There is a place for it, and it doesn't all necessarily have to be evil capitalism, but most of it is.
Yeah, most of it is. And I was just going to say, like, the focus groups and the surveys, which are still done, are kind of in that camp of our last episode, where it feels like, I think people answer differently because they're kind of being observed, and they're being directly observed, and they know they're kind of performing for something, so they're going to act differently. Whereas data-driven is more like, no. How are people actually using this? Like, what are they doing when they're just using it without being observed? Except, really, they're being observed. It's just a little more sinister and anonymized. But and because you said it's so pervasive, that I think we're just so used to it that it has kind of become like we don't really think about being observed anymore because we're just used to it.
If my computer knows everything I'm doing and it can make intelligent decisions, it can make, it could theoretically make my life easier and better. But it's a trade-off for privacy. And, and how much of that do we want? And I expect that this is going to be something that is not necessarily fought over, but definitely a trade-off situation that we will be dealing with for a long time in this industry is how much data is okay to collect before my users are not okay with it.
I think, unfortunately, that we're actually living in that time where most people are okay with their data being collected under the auspices of it making it better for them.
Right. Like, I know when I use TikTok that it is picking up all sorts of data from mine. I don't care about that privacy. Mm-hmm. Like that is a choice I have. I'm like, I don't care. What are you going to do with it? Go ahead, China. You're getting no information from me that is actually useful. I just don't care. But there's other places where I might.
Yeah.
My banking information, I don't necessarily want tracked by anything other than my bank and my financial advisor. Right? Like, so they're if my computer is watching everything I do, recall, I'm not cool with it.
There was so much blowback against that that it was going to be like default on these new Windows 11 machines that Microsoft was making. I forget what they're called, that they have now switched to saying that it's going to be off by default because of the blowback.
So they recalled the feature?
They did. They recalled the default option of it being on, which was probably a good idea. This is a war we're fighting, and it's going to keep going, but I think there's going to be a small insurgency revolution, like there always is with these kinds of things, that's going to fight back against it and be like, no, you don't really need Google Analytics, especially for your tiny blog. You don't need Google Analytics. Stop feeding Google your information. Just write some words on the internet, let your friends know about it, and be done with it, because that's how it used to be. You don't have to be a brand. You don't have to have trends. You just want to share things with people that you care about knowing about those things, and not the world at large, so it can target you.
Right. Like the 2 or 3 people that listen to this podcast. Hello.
Hey, Mom.
Hi, Mike's mom. Right. Like, we're putting this thing out there because we find this an interesting thing to do, to discuss these kind of topics. And if someone gets benefit out of that, awesome. And if someone wants to provide us feedback of like, I would like this aspect even more, cool. But like, I don't know how often you're just staring at the trends of the episodes and being like, okay, this episode got 10 downloads. I've definitely done it with with other podcasts I've been on. Mm-hmm. The one I used to have with my daughter, I definitely would check those. I'm like, oh, for some reason this one really took off, and our D&D podcast, like, will definitely, like, for some reason this one skyrocketed, and maybe that's where analytics could be useful, because then we can do more episodes about feet. I don't know.
Yeah, probably not going to do that, but you never know. I mean, the only time that I've really thought about analyzing the data that I get for our podcast, which is really just how many people have downloaded it, and there are some other stats that our provider provides, or that our host provides, but in general, the only time that we've ever had a spike is when I've shared it with Reddit, and that was about an advent of code, and I think that's just because that's that's a very collaborative and community-driven event, and so people want to know about things related to it, and in general, it's we're not popular yet, but the thing is, we enjoy doing it, and that's what's important. And Google, suck it.
Yeah, and if we want to get into that hustle culture lifestyle with this, we could.
But we could. Won't. If we were 20 years younger, we probably would, but we probably won't.
Yeah, exactly. I personally, this is way off topic, and we'll probably just cut this out of the show. I am tired of every single thing that anybody does having to generate money. I do woodworking stuff,
Yeah.
And like, I will talk to the folks at the woodworking shop, and they're like, "Oh, you could sell that for like this." I'm like, I'm not doing it for that. I enjoy making this thing.
Yeah. Well, but you live in a
I don't want to not make money at it, but
yeah, you live in a
point.
capitalist society, for good or for worse, and so somebody is going to mention, well, you could make money doing that, and I'm like, I could, but do I really want to monetize literally everything that I do and enjoy? No.
And if you enjoy this podcast, what you should do is please click that like and subscribe right now. And,
Yeah, if anybody wants to
tell your
sponsor us, Google, that ship has probably sailed, but maybe someone else. Yeah, data analytics is big data is here. It's been around. It's not going away, but use it wisely. So that's our episode. Thank you for joining us. If you want to listen to more Hacking the Grepson episodes, you can find us at hackingthegrepson.com. We try to put an episode out every other week on Wednesday. But until the next show with data that you can analyze, we now return you to your regularly scheduled lives already in progress.